Sparkly salutations! As requested by my old roommate Allie, who I love very much, I have done a tutorial for these rainbow eyes. I basically just recorded myself as I was getting ready, and I didn't say anything because I'm hoping I can figure out how voiceover works now. Haven't tried that before, but let's see how that goes.
Hello, it's me in voiceover form. So I already have mascara on my top lashes because I am horrible at not getting mascara on my eyeshadow, and it's just easier to do mascara first. To help the shadows be vibrant and stay in place all day, I'm using a little bit of Milani's Eyeshadow Primer on each eye. Since eye primer makes your eyelids tacky, and that makes blending difficult, I'm going to set the primer above my crease. This is when I learned that I need to tell my phone's camera to focus back on my face after I do a close-up part. Fun! Anyway, I'm using the Essence single shadow called Chili Vanilli to set that part of my eyes. If you don't have a shadow that's about the same color as your skin, you can also use translucent setting powder, but a shadow will help cover up veins and darkness, which I have a lot of on my eyes. Now for the fun part. I'm using the bright yellow from my Violet Voss Sparkling Cherry Limeade palette with a flat, dense brush to pack some sparkly sunshine on the inner thirdish of my right eye. It's not showing up super well in the video, but I promise it's a very bright shadow, I just have a bad recording setup. Between eyeshadow colors, I wipe off my brush on a stipple sponge that lives in an old powder container. That way I can use the same brush for multiple colors in one eye look and not end up getting leftover yellow shadow in my orange. Now, I'm using the bright orange from that same palette from before and putting it on the middle of my eyelid. I'll worry about blending later, for now I'm just packing the color on. The red I'm putting on the outer third of my lid is the ColourPop SuperShock shade called Erotic, which is a rather weird name, but not the weirdest ColourPop has. These shadows apply best to the finger, so I'm using my pinky finger with its purposefully short nail, also known as my Pepsi nail. I'm blending the red a little bit onto the orange. To blend these colors, I'm using a soft, fluffy brush with no shadow on it to diffuse the shadows in my crease. I know from a distance there isn't that much of a visible difference, but you always want to blend the edge of your shadows unless you want them to have a harsh, defined stopping point. I'm now using my clean ring finger to blur the lines between the orange shadow and the ones on both sides. My technique is basically to smudge back and forth a little on either side of that line until the colors look blended. Using my ring finger again, I'm adding a little more orange on the center of my eyelid and also going back to the red with my pinky to restore some of the vibrancy that got lost in blending. With that blending brush again, and being careful not to touch anything with my very colorful fingers, I'm going over the outer edge again just a little bit more. Left eye time. I'm starting with ColourPop's Fizz on my pinky, which I thoroughly wiped of all red, and I'm putting that in the same area where the yellow is on my right eye. That's a lovely face I'm making. This color is a little sheer at first, but you can build it up to a nice neon lime. Next up, I'm using ColourPop's Banana Daiquiri. I've never had a banana daiquiri, but I would assume they're not actually turquoise. What you can't see here is that I'm putting that on the part of my eye that's next to where the green stopped. I'm not used to doing my makeup with a handheld mirror or making sure that the mirror isn't blocking a camera, so sorry about that. With the flat, dense brush I used earlier, I'm putting ColourPop's Tide Pool next to where Banana Daiquiri ends. I'm using a lot of ColourPop shadows because they're great quality, pretty inexpensive, and they come in a lot of fun, vibrant colors. I'm not being sponsored or anything. That'd be cool, though. The purple that will be going on the outer section of my right eye is this one from the Juvia's Place Violets palette. The colors don't have names, but it's that one. After cleaning off the brush, as I have been doing every time I use it, I'm putting on more Tide Pool since the purple covered up a little bit of that. It's blending time! This brush is once again clean and will diffuse the shadows in my crease. I'm using light pressure and just trying to make all of the defined edges disappear. I'm adding a bit more green and turquoise to help those colors re-brighten now that the edges are blended. Sometimes blending will make the colors less distinct, and while I don't want distinct lines where one stops and one starts, I do want the colors themselves to be obviously different. I really wish the camera version looked as vibrant as it did in reality, because in the video, it seems almost like I'm going for a pastel look. If I ever upgrade my recording setup to have fancy lighting and a camera that isn't my phone, maybe I'll redo this video so you can see how bright and sparkly everything actually is. Here's an awkward close-up of how it's looking so far. Now that the only eyeshadow left to do is on my lower eyelids, it's safe to do my face. I'll skip ahead since that part isn't very interesting. I've brought the foundation and concealer pretty much up to where the eyeshadow stops, and I'll blend the shadow's edge after I've set my face with some powder. Back to eyeshadow. I'm using the same green as before and putting it on the inner part of my lower lash line on the right eye using a short, flat, dense brush. I wish I could use my finger, but this is a really weird area to try to stick my finger in, and putting stuff on my lower lash line is uncomfortable enough as it is. After cleaning off that brush, I'm using it again with the turquoise shade and putting that next to the green. Same thing again, but with the bright blue shadow this time. I really do make some very unattractive expressions while I put on my makeup, apparently. Good to know. To finish up this side's lower lash line, back to that purple with a clean brush. To get a bit more precise, I'm now using an angled flat brush with the purple so I can put it right in the corner of my eye. Now that all the colors are where they're supposed to be, I'm using a small fluffy brush with no shadow on it to blend the bottom edge of the shadows and help them fade out instead of abruptly stopping. I'm taking a tiny bit of foundation on my concealer brush to help soften the edge a little bit more. Back to the Violet Voss palette's bright yellow shade for the inner third of my left eye's lower lash line. And, you guessed it, I clean the brush and go back to the orange. I finish up the left eye's lower lash line colors with that bright red from ColourPop. I'm swapping to that angled brush again for the outer corner. I'm putting some more orange in the middle here and blending it with the edge of the yellow a little. Back to the angled brush with the red shadow and doing kind of the same thing, blending a bit and adding a bit. With a small fluffy brush from before, I'm once again blending the bottom edge of the shadows. Like on the other side, I'm using a little bit of foundation on a concealer brush to soften and diffuse. This step also helps clean up any bits of shadow that fell underneath my eye. Time to see if I can get mascara onto my sparse lower lashes without making a mess. I'm using Maybelline's loose translucent setting powder in Fair to lightly set my entire face. Since there are some creases under my eyes, I'm smoothing those out again before setting the area with powder. Using a fluffy brush with some shadow that matches my skin, I'm blending along the edge of that red shadow on my right eye since I made it kind of a weird shape. I'm doing the same thing with my left eye and the purple on the outer edge. Now that my foundation is set, I can add some blush. I'm also doing my eyebrows a little and adding a simple lip gloss since my eye look is kind of intense. To help the makeup mesh together and stay on my face, I'm blasting the e.l.f. setting spray on myself. It's a little aggressive. And here we have the finished eye look. Yay!
So that was my first ever makeup tutorial. I hope it went well. I haven't put it together in editing yet, so we'll see. Let me know if there are other tutorials you want me to do, if you want me to do a more calm, everyday, office appropriate kind of thing, or if you like the wild color kinds of looks. Whatever you guys want to see, I can try to do, and hopefully the format of this was okay. I know most beauty YouTubers will zoom in really close so you can see what they're doing on their eyes, but I'm using my phone with the front-facing camera and I can't zoom on that, and it's kind of weird to just... So, let me know how that went, and stay safe and wash your hands.